Meet our protagonist, Itsuki, who is rushing to meet Mahiro, a childhood friend with whom he shares a home. They meet on the school rooftop, and after catching his breath, she drops a bombshell she's pregnant. Itsuki is taken aback, initially thinking he might be the father. However, just as she's about to reveal the father's identity, a green flash in the sky interrupts them, whisking them away to a strange place. Mahiro tells him to look for an exit, but then drops another bombshell. There is no father because she is still a virgin. She explains to Itsuki that for the past week, she has been feeling strange and took several pregnancy tests, all of which came back positive. Mahiro suddenly experiences unbearable pain in her stomach, and Itsuki assumes it's nausea. But then a strange spirit emerges from her, throwing him against a wall. A light mark appears on her cheek, and at that moment, a sword with the same mark materializes. Itsuki steps in front of her to defend her, and after taking a beating, he finally manages to eliminate the spirit. The wall opens, revealing a forest, and Mahiro says she feels better now. Suddenly, a raccoon named Mana appears, welcoming them to the magical land of Granvania. Mana explains that they are the chosen visitors from the sky, marked by constellations, appearing every 10 years in their world with a great power they must use to save it. But before they can return home, they must complete this mission to save Granvania. Mahiro feels unwell again, and the king sends her to a doctor. Mana takes Itsuki to a room saying he will be his caretaker. That night, a priestess appears, stating that now that the divine beings have arrived, they must fulfill their duty. The next day, Itsuki wakes up chained to a bed, with a doctor named Rioni examining him. She shows him the marks of the 12 constellations on his body and asks if he is willing to undertake the mission. Itsuki agrees, as it is the only way to return home with Mahiro. The mission involves entering a labyrinth to face monsters controlled by the Lord of Impurities, who resides in the deepest level. They must contain these monsters to return to their world. They will have the help of 12 priestesses who can purify the impurities and create star guardians according to the constellations. At this moment, they discover that Mahiro is one of the priestesses, the one of Virgo. Mana explains that the priestesses alone cannot handle the impurities, so they must perform a kind of love ritual. Essentially, Itsuki must form emotional bonds with the 12 priestesses to produce star children, who are the only ones capable of saving the world alongside him. Not being foolish, Itsuki agrees immediately, and to their surprise, Rioni says it must be first with Mahiro. Respecting Mahiro's feelings, he agrees, and she consents, wanting to return home. They are about to engage in the ritual when they are interrupted, being told that the child has already arrived, leaving Itsuki confused since he had only just begun. Rioni explains that it wasn't necessary to go all the way. Instead, they needed to form emotional bonds through physical contact. They are delighted to see their child, who is then taken to a foster home to be trained until ready to face the impurities. We then see them walking through the kingdom when they bump into a girl running late for a meeting. She gets upset with Itsuki, but he quickly apologizes, and she runs off. They arrive where Rioni is, and she introduces all the priestesses: Eris of Aries, Tarua of Taurus, Lyle of Gemini, Ruka of Cancer, Femir of Leo, Mire of Libra, Su of Sagittarius, Fallon of Capricorn, Colette of Aquarius, Azura of Pisces, and Rioni, the representative of Scorpio. Mana is already excited, saying Itsuki should form bonds with all of them, handing him the man's manual, revealing that this raccoon has some rather suspicious plans. The next day, Mana plans a picnic with all the priestesses to try to bring Itsuki closer to them. While everyone eats and enjoys themselves, Itsuki notices that Huka has disappeared, so he goes to look for her. He finds her in a flower garden, prickly as ever, saying she wants to take some to the orphanage where she works. She suspects Itsuki of having some unsavory thoughts, revealing that she is psychic and can read minds. She proposes to read his mind, but it doesn't work because he is not from Granvania. She understands and leaves. Later, Mahiro appears slightly tipsy from the Granvania chocolate she ate, and begins to express her feelings to Itsuki, thanking him for saving her from some bullies when they were kids. Later, he meets Huma, who takes him to see the weapons they will use in the labyrinth, and then to see how Virgo is training. He finds his son Virgo training with Alfie, who is responsible for all the star children. Her personality changes, and she becomes excited to see Itsuki. Mana reminds Itsuki that he can only keep an eye on the priestesses. Upon leaving, Mana talks about Ruka, suggesting she should be next. When they arrive at the orphanage, they find Ruka helping a child. At night, he manages to soften her heart and asks to create a star child with her to keep Virgo company. She agrees, and at midnight, the next child is born. The next day, the king gives Itsuki the 12 star guardians, saying they will protect him from some dangers while facing the impurities in the labyrinth. They prepare, and Itsuki goes with the priestesses to open the labyrinth's entrance. Inside, they encounter one of the 12 impurities, the weakest of them all, but they are utterly useless against this monster. Being a good father, Itsuki grabs the children and flees. Mana explains that they need more and stronger children to defeat the impurities. After leaving the labyrinth, the star children transform into statues to protect themselves from danger and heal, then return to their original form. They visit Narcissist, who explains that the problem is that all the priestesses are young and inexperienced virgins. He proposes a double love ritual with 2 priestesses simultaneously to generate stronger children, warning that it has never been done before, and the consequences are unknown. Later, they head to the hot springs, and Mana suggests they relax and enjoy an outdoor Netflix session. I must admit, this raccoon never ceases to amaze me with what comes out of his mouth. He notices a keychain similar to Elle's, which makes her nervous. While they are enjoying the hot springs, she notices the scars on his body from training and encourages him, saying she fears losing him. Overwhelmed by the heat, she faints, and when she recovers, she realizes her doll fell into the hot springs. Panicked, Itsuki goes back to retrieve it. When he finally finds it, he apologizes for forgetting their promise that he swore to protect her forever. They enter a romantic vibe, about to kiss when Mana appears, interrupting them with a bunch of suspicious ideas. While in the infirmary, they explain the double ritual Narcissist mentioned. She becomes concerned and offers to perform the ritual with another priestess of his choice. Later, he arrives at the bar where Fallen works and finds her dancing and entertaining the customers. They drink juice while chatting, but when Itsuki brings up the love ritual, her demeanor changes completely. She explains that she didn't like the idea of becoming a priestess because she was always a traveler, now stuck in a city. Itsuki sneaks a peek at his man's manual and puts the tips into practice in a rather unconventional way. Unable to resist the atmosphere, she agrees to the idea. Our protagonist nearly falters at the sight of the 2 priestesses eager to proceed, but they compose themselves and manage to bring forth 2 more strong star children. The next day, they return to the labyrinth, this time with 4 star children, and finally defeat the first impurity. However, as they leave, they hear a loud roar from the depths of Granvania. The day begins, with Huma telling some steamy stories to Itsuki, who gets annoyed and runs off to hide in a sanctuary where he meets Ari. She is delighted to see him, but several children appear, and he says he must take care of them. Later, we see Itsuki trying to buy something to eat amidst the crowd. Azura, one of the priestesses, gets bored and leaves. When he finally manages to buy something, he sees the girl, but she quickly hides behind a tree, lamenting why she was chosen for this. After searching for a while, he decides to eat and wonders if she managed to buy her snack. At that moment, Mana appears with another manual, offering tips to win her over and have another star child. He goes to her house to offer her some bread. She opens the door and lets him in because she really needed it, but he realizes she was using the bread to erase some drawings, revealing she is a painter. The strangest thing is that she sleeps inside it, saying it helps her dream of more things to draw, and that she prefers staying there since she doesn't like people, which intrigues Itsuki. After some conversation, he convinces her to go eat in a park that is usually quiet, just to get some fresh air and relax. In the park, Uzura appears carrying a coffin on her back, as if it were a simple backpack filled with painting supplies. A child points at Mana, who is disguised in a tree, causing the mother to cover the child's eyes in horror. However, Uzura thinks the child is pointing at her and runs off. Itsuki tries to explain, but it's no use. Back home, she cries, believing it's her fault, and that people now think Itsuki is a weirdo. We then see him at the sanctuary, pondering how to help the girl when Ari arrives, and explains that Uzura has a sleep disorder. The more she sleeps, the closer she is to passing away, which is why she dislikes people and always carries the coffin in case she needs it. Itsuki has a bright idea and goes to Uzura's house with the coffin at her door to show her she's not alone. He tells her he wants to explore the world with her. Touched by his words, Uzura comes out, and they have a great time together. The next day, Uzura tells Itsuki she managed to dream and, as a form of gratitude, wants to fulfill her duty as a priestess, resulting in the birth of another star child. The following day, Mana congratulates him and gives him a gift to win over Ari. He follows through and goes to the sanctuary to deliver the present, not knowing what's inside. She is thrilled because he nailed everything she likes, but the box contains something that awakens her inner beast. Unable to resist, she decides to try it on Itsuki, who is enjoying it. Itsuki and his children defeat another impurity, this time the 4th one. As they descend deeper, the impurities worsen, requiring more star children. Mana comes up with a brilliant idea, a summer beach trip with all the priestesses. He confesses that his plan is going well, and he even prepared each of their outfits. At this moment, a guy named Seiya, a fellow from the academy who is always hanging around the girls, shows up, following them to show off as usual. They arrive at the beach, and everyone has fun while Lyle relaxes under an umbrella. Our hero appears, and Seiya starts a selfie session, being a mega narcissist. Lyle mentions that her future reading shows he's after her, and no one can stop it. Itsuki says he doesn't believe in such luck-based things, which leaves her indignant and in tears. She transforms into Lilith, who is a bit feisty, and starts scolding him. She challenges him to a reading to prove it's real and accurate. He agrees, and Lyle returns to perform the reading, but she becomes frightened by his fortune. To avoid telling him, she admits she was wrong. Lilith reappears, arguing with him for making her cry again. She finds his fortune and bluntly tells him he will die if he continues the mission, yet he remains skeptical. She responds that the baby will help him, and also avert danger. To make him believe, she alters her destiny, leading Mana to take him to a climax to leave them in peace at the beach. Surprised, Itsuki soon believes what she says, and they decide to change his future. Suddenly, both appear, and together they bring forth another star child. Afterward, we see all the star children training with Alfie, observed by Ari, who is also being followed by Seiya. When Alfie approaches, he realizes what Seiya is doing and scares him off. Ari too is recognized, and becomes frightened, fleeing the scene. Later, we see her with her blacksmith, delighted to have received an ancient weapon she requested. She takes it to the sanctuary's basement, where many others are stored, revealing her strange obsession with armament. After all the commotion, Seiya asks to hide in the sanctuary. She agrees but requests something in return. He poses with weapons while Ari enjoys taking numerous photos. However, he lacks strength and ends up falling, scaring her. At this moment, Itsuki understands something else and assures her it's okay, promising to keep her secret. Mana tells him not to worry because all the priestesses are still pure, which confuses him since it seemed otherwise when he entered. With no choice, Ari takes him to where all the weapons are and confesses her fondness for them, thinking he'll find it odd. Instead, he is thrilled because he thought she was prickly and proper, which made it hard to approach her. She is overjoyed and asks him to pose for her. In the end, he is very happy because now he can get closer and asks to have a star child with her. The moment arrives, and Ari reveals her secrets behind that beautiful face. Days after the birth of Ari's child, we see Colette, a young priestess known by everyone. However, she is so innocent that our protagonist hesitates to break her purity, but Mana insists as he did with the others. Our hero begins helping Colette at the bakery, and when he asks if he's there just to have another star child, he is surprised and says he's only helping and doesn't want to do that until they know each other better. Colette agrees and confesses her dream has always been to bake bread and manage her grandfather's bakery, which excites him even more to sell all the bread. Once again, Mana can't sit still and comes up with suspicious ideas for the two, even though Itsuki tries to send him away. He simply won't stop and keeps appearing. They finish preparing the bread, and Colette gives Itsuki a taste. They prepare to welcome customers and sell all the delicious bread they made. However, all the excitement fades when they see the bakery completely empty. Colette explains that sales have dropped since her grandfather fell ill, leaving them saddened by the situation. At that moment, Mihiro and Ari enter and buy a bunch of bread after hearing that Itsuki is working there. Then Alfie arrives with his children to see their routine and enjoy all the bread they can eat, but only because Itsuki was there. Itsuki asks Colette why the bakery doesn't sell as it used to. At that moment, some guys from the Lunch Attack Company, a rival bakery, show up, threatening to buy her bakery, leaving her very upset. Itsuki's children manage to make them feel bad, belittling them excessively, causing them to flee. Colette explains the whole situation to Itsuki. Since the company arrived with packaged snacks, all other bakeries had to close due to competition, and only her grandfather managed to keep the place full of customers. Mana says that Famir Una's family owns the Lunch Attack and suggests talking to her. They agree and go to speak with her, but she says she can't do anything. Desperate for the bakery, he continues to insist she do something, and she trips and hits her head. When she wakes up, she's in a dark room with a strange guy with a bag over his head offering bread and telling her to rest. She thinks she's being kidnapped by him, but we later see he had to do it out of fear of being arrested for hurting a priestess and started taking care of her in Colette's warehouse. She wakes up again and wants to escape, but when she opens the bars, she is startled, thinking she was taken far away, but she's just on the outskirts of the kingdom. Later, he appears again and leaves bread for her, but she's suspicious, thinking something is wrong with the bread, and doesn't eat it. Not long after, he enters and finds her nearly dead. Worried, he removes the bag and expresses his concern for her, but she doesn't even question why he's there and becomes emotional, remembering that no one ever treated her so well and everyone only pursued her for her family's wealth. At that moment, she confesses she has fallen for him. He seizes the opportunity and fulfills his duty as Granvania's savior once more. They hear that sinister roar echoing throughout the kingdom, leaving them worried. After all this, Mana is writing a horror script for the Divine Star Festival happening in the city. It turns out he's concocting another plan to win over another priestess. At this moment, we see Tarua, one of the priestesses. She finds Itsuki and hands him a letter from Colette. Mana heads to Colette's bakery, and along the way sees all the priestesses setting up their stalls for the festival. Upon arriving at the bakery, Itsuki finds Colette, who says she obtained the book containing her grandfather's 100 bread recipes. However, the last page with the best recipe was stolen. She plans to make the famous happy bread for the festival to attract more customers, which is why she called Itsuki to help her recreate the recipe. While working together, Colette playfully asks which part of him would make a good bread shape, hinting at ideas for their bread. She starts crafting bread in the shape of various body parts, though one resembles something else entirely, making him realize things might not be as innocent as they seem. After many attempts and failures, she recalls her grandfather's advice that the secret to happy bread is to put all your love into it, like those scenes on Netflix. Finally, they manage to make it in the most peculiar way possible, finishing their bakery stand just in time for the festival. At this moment, and Mahiro set up a stand next door to sell snacks from Femir Una's family, sparking a competition between the two stands. Colette ends up selling all her bread, making her feel better, and she thanks Itsuki by giving him another star child, dressed as the ingredients of happy bread. Afterward, he finds Tarua, who is collecting all the lost letters from her deliveries, but one is still missing. Desperate, she starts crying, saying she'll quit this job for good. Fortunately, Itsuki finds and delivers it to her, and overjoyed, she hugs him. They finish delivering the letters, and she gives him a letter saying she loves him dearly, asking him to fulfill his duty as a priestess. After all this, they manage to defeat the impurities of levels 9 and 10, leaving only 2 more levels. Mana, the mischievous one, creates a reality show where the girls all have their eyes on Itsuki, and the winner will have the grandest love ritual with him. She hands a letter from Itsuki to the girls, saying there will be a date with Ai, but without them noticing, she has already slipped away. Mana finds her playing with a chicken, revealing her love for animals. Now we see the two together, and Itsuki uses the man's manual talk, saying he wants to get to know her better. Realizing she loves animals, he takes her to a place full of them. She is delighted and thanks him for his interest in the creatures. Afterward, he decides to prepare a delicious feast for her. She finally opens up, crying and thanking Itsuki for his kindness and care. She shares that her parents died fighting impurities attacking the kingdom to save her life. Itsuki hugs her, saying he feels their bond strengthening. After this, there's a group date with Famira, Rion, Mireille, and other girls. Mana decides to test the girls in an agility race, making them climb a slippery staircase. Whoever reaches the top first wins a date with Itsuki. After much struggle, Mireille finally reaches the top, earning a date with him. We see Itsuki acting strangely, inviting her into the pool to clean up. She removes her glasses, saying she can't see well, and he helps her in and assists with the cleaning. At this moment, she reveals herself to be a rather unique researcher, starting to investigate something peculiar underwater, if you catch my drift. After this escapade, Itsuki prepares a delicious feast like the one he gave Sui, revealing she's still in the competition. In the end, after all the dates with the finalists, Mireille and Sui win the constellation ritual, which will be a double one again. Initially, they feel insecure and don't want to proceed, but the crazy researcher releases a gas that hypnotizes everyone, changing their minds. Thus, 2 more are added to the count. A few days later, we see Alfie presenting the new children and feeling worried because when it's all over, Itsuki will move on with his life. It seems she has developed feelings for him. At the castle, Narcissist announces the discovery of a 13th labyrinth, now the source of all impurities, something unprecedented. He explains the situation to Mana, suggesting there must be another maiden for Itsuki. She ponders this idea, saying it's possible it could be a man since it's never happened before. But Itsuki, being a man, denies this possibility at all costs. Coincidentally, they start encountering Seiya everywhere, making it seem like he's into Itsuki, which confuses and bothers him. Mana tries her best to convince him, saying it's to save the world. Later, Seiya notices Itsuki is upset and asks what's going on. They chat alone in a room, and Seiya starts doing some suspicious things, almost kissing Itsuki. At that moment, Itsuki thinks he might end up becoming a priestess, so he refuses and runs away, scared. Seiya gets upset with him for chickening out at the best moment, saying they'll try the next one later. They meet Narcissist in the library by chance, and he thanks Itsuki for fulfilling his duty, making him uncomfortable. Out of nowhere, he asks for help reading an ancient book, but when he opens it, he sees strange drawings in positions like those in Netflix movies, scaring him off. We then see them discussing changes, and Mana says she understands how difficult it is. She shares her story with him. She was an impurity used by a wizard for coexistence experiments in the kingdom, but he died before completing his goal. The previous visitor protected her, allowing her to serve the kingdom as a second chance. Mana's story makes Itsuki accept the idea and attempt to change. He is determined and ready to do anything to save the world and return home with his beloved. In the room, the two men agree with the idea, and just as they are about to start, the room's walls collapse. Mana explains that neither of them was the 13th, and everyone knew it, but they did this to help him mature and understand the 13th's feelings. The next day, we see Itsuki training with Alfie and his children, showing they are ready for battle and will defeat the Lord of Impurities. Once again, we see her immense concern for him. The following day, everyone prepares for battle. Upon entering the labyrinth, they encounter the Lord of Impurities, Sagittarius, and after a long, intense fight, they manage to defeat him. However, when offering the last Star Guardian, everything starts to tremble, and a beam of light strikes Granvania. Later, we see our protagonist in the kingdom's castle with Narcissist and the king. They explain that the last impurity has been born and needs to be defeated, but to do so, they must find the next priestess as soon as possible. Meanwhile, we see Mireille meeting Alfie, saying she was worried about her because of the new labyrinth, but Alfie doesn't care about that and only wants to find an ancient book in hopes of making Itsuki fall in love with her and discovering she is the 13th. After trying so hard and failing, she decides to confess once and for all. Later, Mana appears upset after discovering she is the 13th and has been silent until now, but she confesses she wants it to happen romantically, like in 80s soap operas. Mana likes the idea and agrees to help with the date. He strives to make it like a soap opera, even having a romantic dinner and everything. Afterward, he asks to return to her house to talk and get to know each other better. Itsuki opens up, sharing about his parents who died in an accident. She apologizes, but he doesn't mind anymore. At that moment, he gives her a dress similar to one worn by an idol she likes, strengthening their bond. Just as the best part arrives, she falls ill and faints right there. Later, when she recovers, she decides to fulfill her duty as a priestess, and together they create the 13th star child. After finishing, they present the new child along with all the others, noticing she is different from the rest. But then Alfie faints again. Itsuki and Mana take her to a room, seeing she is in terrible condition. Meanwhile, at the castle, Narcissist tells the king about the new child, and they decide it's time to reveal the truth and make an important call. A few days later, we see the two at some kind of Christmas festival. Mana says she needs to buy some unique books for her collection. At that moment, Narcissist appears to tell Itsuki that the king needs him. He leaves Mana behind, and when he arrives, Narcissist and the king talk about the 13th impurity, which is actually invincible, and can only be sealed through a ritual involving summoning the Great Star Guardian to sacrifice it. Meanwhile, Mana searches for Itsuki throughout the castle and finds him just as they tell Itsuki that he is the Guardian and that to seal the labyrinth, he must sacrifice his own life. At this moment, Mana is devastated upon hearing this, and Itsuki feels the same. Leaving the castle, he is depressed, contemplating his fate, and asks Mana to leave him alone. He goes to the festival, seeing everyone having fun, and thinks about buying gifts for all the priestesses. We then see him delivering a present to each one according to their tastes, until it's Mahiro's turn, to whom he gives a new keychain like the one he gave when they were kids. He tells her to use it as a lucky charm when she returns alone to the world, promising he will always be with her in her heart. But she doesn't quite understand and says they will be together forever. Just as she is about to kiss him, they are interrupted by Mana, who complains jealously about not receiving her gift. He also goes to Alfie's house, finding her recovering in bed. He plays the good boyfriend, taking care of her, which moves her, but she simply couldn't hide it anymore, and reveals she is the daughter of a visitor from another world and a priestess. Her mother died attacked by an impurity, but they let her escape, saying she was a special star child. Over time, she grew up and lost her Star Child powers, gaining priestess powers, leaving them very impressed because it had never happened before. But now she is determined to protect him with her life. After visiting Alfie, Itsuki finally decides to sacrifice himself to save this world. Before leaving, he calls Mana to his room, and when she arrives, he gives her a Christmas candy as a gift. Since it's not much, he hugs her tightly, and they end up doing some things. At night, Mana bids him farewell with tears in her eyes as he sleeps, lying beside him for the last time. The next morning, Itsuki tells Mana that he will enter the final labyrinth to seal the last boss and save the world. We see the king informing the maidens about the Great Star Guardian ritual, which involves sealing the labyrinth with Itsuki, the final boss of the impurities, leaving them devastated by the terrible news, knowing there is no other chance. However, on the other side, Itsuki declares he won't do it, he will fight to the end. Together, they enter the labyrinth, and he faces a phantom of the impurities. He tries to attack it in every way possible but causes no damage. Instead, it throws him into the air. Meanwhile, we see Alfie outside with the Star Children, as Itsuki ordered her to take care of the kingdom and the children. In the castle, with heavy hearts and no other option, they begin the ritual. As it starts, a light emerges in the labyrinth, piercing Itsuki, who screams in agony. But Mahiro cannot continue the ritual and refuses to proceed, causing the light in the labyrinth to vanish. Mana states that the ritual was likely suspended. However, the impurity seizes this opportunity and attacks Itsuki fiercely. Desperate, Mahiro asks the king and Narcissist if there is another way. Narcissist mentions a book he and Mirai found in the library, which says that if the visitor unites with all the maidens, they can obtain a great power capable of defeating the impurity. But this remains uncertain, as no one has ever done it before. The king also reveals he doesn't want Itsuki to die and orders them to help him. On the other hand, we see the Star Children sensing a strong malevolent presence, and the impurities phantom that escaped the labyrinth appears, prompting them to join Itsuki in an attempt to defeat it. The 12 maidens also appear, declaring they will defend their city by synchronizing with their children and transforming into fusions that begin attacking the impurity. At this moment, Itsuki is protected by an energy shield Mana creates, while the Star Children are synchronized. Itsuki appears and starts fighting alongside them. The impurity begins attacking, launching multiple lightning bolts simultaneously. The children defend some, and Itsuki others, except for one that heads directly for him. However, Alfie steps in front and protects him. With a smile on her face, she says she is very happy to have fulfilled her duty as a Star Child, and thus she passes away. The maidens witness Alfie's sacrifice and give all their powers to Itsuki, obtaining the greatest power to fight against the impurity. They launch a mega attack, revealing its true, even stronger form. It starts attacking Itsuki with everything it has, revealing it wants to use him to destroy the entire world together. However, Itsuki refuses, affirming his love for each of the girls he has been with, and that's why their children were born to defeat it. At this moment, Alfie's daughter, who had been watching everything, finally gains courage and joins them, transforming into a trident to face the boss. They attack with all the strength they have left, and finally manage to destroy the boss once and for all. After all this, the Star Children bid farewell, saying they will handle the rest, and thanking Itsuki for bringing them into the world. The battle ends, and back at the castle, we see the king thanking the priestesses and Itsuki. Later, he is alone, reflecting on everything that happened and what he will do next. Mahiro arrives, saying she understands if he wants to stay, but she will leave because she wants to see her parents and her world again. However, Itsuki decides to return with her. After all this, we see everyone gathered in front of the portal to say goodbye to the two, expressing their gratitude and love for Itsuki. But they simply cannot imagine a life without him. They all start running toward the portal because they don't want to say goodbye. They push each other, and everyone falls through the portal. Believe it or not, for some reason, the 12 Star Children appear along with Alfie and Mana in her true form, and as the portal closes, it's too late, and there's no way back. Itsuki had to live with them, and they adapted to life on Earth. I don't know if this is possible, but since it's an anime, the guy simply married all of them, and we can say this protagonist truly made the most of his harem. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content. Remember to comment the secret phrase "starry endings" to show you are a true fan. Stay tuned and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next episode, where we'll dive into more exciting adventures with our favorite characters. See you next time.